Have you ever wondered why you can sleep for 8, 9, even 10 hours and still wake up feeling like you've been drained of every ounce of vitality? Why is it that you can walk into a room and immediately sense when someone's energy is off, or meet a person who seems to light up the entire space without saying a single word? What if I told you that the answer to these mysteries has nothing to do with how much coffee you drink, what supplements you take, or even how positive your thoughts are? Right now, as you're reading these words, something extraordinary is happening beneath the surface of your awareness. You're not just a collection of bones, muscles, and organs sitting in front of a screen. You are, at your most fundamental level, a living, breathing field of energy, constantly transmitting and receiving invisible frequencies that shape not only how you feel, but the very reality you experience moment by moment. This isn't mystical thinking or New Age philosophy. This is physics. This is biology. This is the documented science that's been hiding in plain sight for over 100 years, yet somehow never made it into the conversations we have about health, success, or happiness. Think about your last week. Has this ever happened to you? You go to bed early, you follow all the rules, no screens before sleep, a dark room, the perfect temperature, and yet you wake up more exhausted than when you laid down. Meanwhile, you probably know someone who seems to run on 5 hours of sleep and radiates the kind of presence that makes everyone around them feel more alive. The difference between these two experiences isn't willpower. It isn't genetics. It's frequency. It's the energetic signature you're broadcasting into the field of reality around you, and more importantly, what you're unconsciously absorbing from everything and everyone in your environment. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, stay with me until the end of this, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. We're living in a time when your attention, your focus, your very consciousness has become the most valuable resource on the planet. And whether you realize it or not, there are systems, technologies, and even people who have figured out how to extract this energy from you without you ever knowing it's happening. The chronic exhaustion you feel isn't just physical fatigue, it's energetic depletion. And the transformation begins when you understand that you are not a powerless victim of your circumstances. You are a dynamic energy field with the capacity to consciously control your frequency. And when you do, something remarkable happens. Reality bends to meet you, not in some abstract, philosophical way, but in a measurable, documentable pattern that scientists have been studying since the early 20th century. When Einstein shattered our understanding of the physical world with his famous equation, he wasn't just talking about atoms and explosions. He was revealing something far more personal, far more immediate, that you, me, every person you've ever met, every object you've ever touched, is nothing more than energy in motion. Pure, vibrating energy. There is no solid matter. There never was. What appears solid is simply energy vibrating so slowly, so densely, that it creates the illusion of permanence. This changes everything, because if you're not a fixed, solid thing, if you're a dynamic field of constantly moving energy, then you're not stuck. You're not limited by your past, your genetics, or your circumstances. You're a frequency that can be tuned, adjusted, and completely transformed. And here's where the hidden truth reveals itself. Most people go their entire lives never realizing they have this power. They believe they're victims of their environment, their upbringing, their bad luck. But the real revelation, the one that shifts everything, is understanding that your energetic state isn't something that happens to you. It's something you can consciously control. Think about the last time you walked into a room and instantly felt uncomfortable, even though nothing obvious was wrong. Or when you met someone for the first time and immediately knew you could trust them, despite having no logical reason for that feeling. Those weren't random intuitions. That was your energy field reading and responding to the frequencies around you. You're doing this constantly, every second of every day, processing information that exists far beyond what your five senses can detect. The question isn't whether this is happening, it's whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. This channel brings you frameworks that actually create change, practical tools you can use immediately to transform your reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually happens when you start taking control of this process. Your brain, remarkable as it is, can only process a fraction of the information flooding into it at any given moment. Scientists estimate that your nervous system receives roughly 11 million bits of data every single second. Sounds, sensations, electromagnetic signals, visual information, all competing for your attention. But your conscious mind can only handle about 40 to 50 bits per second. That means you're filtering out more than 99% of reality. You're not experiencing the world as it is. You're experiencing a highly edited version, customized by your beliefs, your past experiences, your fears, and your focus. This filtering system has a name, the reticular activating system. It's the part of your brain that decides what matters and what doesn't, what gets through to your awareness and what remains invisible. And here's the transformation point. You can reprogram this filter. When you shift your frequency, when you change the energetic state you're operating from, your brain literally begins showing you a different reality. The opportunities were always there, the solutions were always available, the connections you needed were always within reach. But your filter wasn't calibrated to see them. The moment you understand that your observation of reality isn't passive, that you're actively participating in what becomes real for you through the quality of your attention and the frequency you're broadcasting, everything shifts. You stop being a passenger in your own life and become the conscious creator of your experience. Write in the comments, "I'm taking control," if this resonates with you, because what comes next will show you exactly how to apply this understanding in ways that produce immediate, tangible results in your daily life. Let me walk you through what's happening in the first 60 seconds of your morning, and I promise you, once you see this pattern, you'll never look at your phone the same way again. Your alarm goes off. Before your feet touch the floor, before you've taken a full breath, before you've even given yourself a moment to exist in your own consciousness, your hand reaches for your phone. It's automatic, unconscious, and in that single action, you've just handed over the most powerful part of your day to a system designed specifically to extract your energy, your focus, and your attention. The moment that screen lights up, you're hit with a flood. Emails demanding immediate responses, news headlines engineered to trigger fear and outrage, social media notifications pulling you into comparison, envy, and anxiety, text messages that create obligation before you've even decided what you want from your own day. Within 60 seconds, you've leaked more vital energy than your grandparents lost in an entire day. Think about that. The previous generation woke to sunlight streaming through windows, to the sound of birds, to silence that allowed their own thoughts to surface naturally. They had space. They had sovereignty over their morning consciousness. We wake to a digital battleground, and here's what most people don't realize. This isn't accidental. This is by design. Every app, every notification, every algorithm has been carefully crafted by teams of engineers and psychologists whose entire job is to capture and hold your attention for as long as possible. Your focus has become the most valuable commodity in the modern economy, worth more than oil, more than gold, because attention translates directly into dollars. When you're scrolling, someone is profiting. When you're reacting, someone is collecting data. When you're distracted, someone else is winning. And the cost? Your energetic baseline for the entire day. Get set in those first few minutes. You start from a place of reaction instead of creation, of depletion instead of fullness, of scattered chaos instead of centered presence. This is the hidden truth behind the exhaustion epidemic nobody wants to talk about. It's not just that you're tired, it's that your life force is being systematically harvested before you're even conscious enough to protect it. The impact compounds over time. One distracted morning becomes a distracted week. A distracted week becomes a life lived according to someone else's agenda, someone else's timeline, someone else's version of what should matter to you. And the most insidious part? You defend it. You tell yourself you need to check your phone, you need to stay informed, you need to respond immediately. But that's the programming talking. That's the conditioning that's been installed so deeply you mistake it for your own decision-making. Now, I want to show you what happens behind the scenes of this pattern, because understanding the mechanism is the first step toward breaking free from it. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a digital one. When you wake up and immediately expose yourself to information designed to provoke emotional reactions, whether that's outrage at the news, anxiety about work, or comparison on social media, your body responds as if you're under attack. Cortisol floods your system, your heart rate elevates, your breathing becomes shallow. You've activated fight or flight mode before you've even gotten out of bed. And here's the revelation that changes everything. Once your nervous system is in that state, your reticular activating system, that filter we talked about earlier, starts scanning for more threats, more problems, more reasons to stay vigilant. You've programmed your brain to show you a reality filled with danger, scarcity, and inadequacy, all before breakfast. The transformation begins when you realize this is a choice. Not an easy choice because the pull is strong and the habit is deep, but a choice nonetheless. Comment, I choose my mornings if you're ready to reclaim this power, because what I'm about to share next is the practical method that allows you to set your energetic frequency before the world gets its hooks into you. If something shifted for you while watching this, tap that like button. It helps this message reach others who are searching for the same answers you were. The method itself is surprisingly simple, but the impact is profound. And before we get into the practical technique, I need you to understand what's actually operating beneath the surface of your daily experience. Because this goes deeper than just morning routines or phone habits. There are forces at work in your life right now that are extracting your energy in ways so subtle, so sophisticated, that most people live their entire lives without ever recognizing it's happening. These aren't physical forces you can see or touch. They're psychological patterns, social systems, and technological architectures specifically designed to keep you in a state of perpetual reactivity, where your consciousness is always responding to external stimuli instead of creating from your own internal clarity. Think about how your attention moves throughout a typical day. You're working on something meaningful, something that actually matters to you, and then, ping, a notification. Your focus breaks. You check the message. It's not urgent, but now your train of thought is derailed. It takes an average of 23 minutes to return to the same level of concentration you had before the interruption. But another notification arrives in 15 minutes, then another, then another. By the end of the day, you've been pulled in 1,000 different directions, responding to everyone else's priorities, and you wonder why you feel scattered, depleted, exhausted. This is the invisible system at work. Your psychic energy, your ability to focus, to create, to make decisions aligned with your true desires, is being drained in small, imperceptible increments throughout every single hour. And here's the revelation that most people find unsettling when they first encounter it. Your attention has become the most valuable resource in the global economy. There are trillion-dollar industries built entirely on capturing and holding your focus for as long as possible. Advertising, social media, streaming platforms, news organizations, they're all competing for the same finite resource, your consciousness, and they've gotten incredibly good at it. The algorithms know you better than you know yourself. They can predict what will make you click, what will make you watch, what will keep you scrolling. They've mapped your psychology, identified your triggers, and created feedback loops that hijack your natural reward systems. Every like, every share, every comment releases a tiny hit of dopamine, training your brain to seek more of the same stimulation. But nobody asked for your permission. Nobody sat you down and said, we're going to monetize your awareness, extract value from your focus, and leave you feeling empty and fragmented in the process. It happened gradually, normalized over years, until it became so embedded in daily life that questioning it feels radical. The hidden truth is this: if you're not consciously deciding where your attention goes, then someone else is making that decision for you, and they're profiting from it. Your scrolling generates revenue, your clicking creates data, your distraction produces wealth for systems that have no investment in your well-being, your growth, or your transformation. Now, I want to reveal something even more fundamental about how this extraction process works at the level of your nervous system. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you can start making different choices. Your brain is wired to prioritize novelty and potential threats. This is survival programming from a time when noticing the rustling in the bushes could mean the difference between life and death. But in the modern world, this same mechanism gets exploited. Every notification, every headline, every piece of content is engineered to trigger that novelty response or threat detection. Your ancient survival system thinks it's protecting you by paying attention to these signals, but what it's actually doing is keeping you trapped in a state of hypervigilance that was never meant to be sustained for hours, let alone days and years. The impact on your energy field is measurable. When you're constantly in this reactive state, your frequency drops. You vibrate at the level of anxiety, stress, and survival rather than creativity, possibility, and expansion. And remember what we established earlier: reality responds to your frequency. When you're operating from this depleted state, you attract more situations that confirm depletion. More problems, more obstacles, more reasons to feel overwhelmed. Drop "I see it now" in the comments if this pattern is becoming clear, because understanding this mechanism is the gateway to breaking free from it entirely. Breaking free begins with understanding something that will fundamentally shift how you see yourself and your relationship to the world around you. Your consciousness isn't a passive observer sitting inside your head, watching reality unfold like a movie on a screen. That's the illusion we've all been taught to accept. The truth is far more radical and far more empowering. Your consciousness is an active participant in the construction of reality itself. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold is literally broadcasting a signal into the field of infinite possibilities that surrounds you, and that field responds by organizing itself to match your frequency. This sounds mystical, I know. It sounds like something you'd hear from ancient spiritual traditions or esoteric philosophies. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern physics is saying the exact same thing. Quantum mechanics has demonstrated beyond any doubt that observation affects outcome at the most fundamental level of reality. Particles exist in a state of pure potential until consciousness interacts with them, at which point they collapse into a definite state. The observer isn't separate from the observed. The two are intimately Connected in a dance of co-creation, scientists spent decades trying to remove the observer from their experiments because it felt too strange, too uncomfortable to accept that consciousness might play a role in physical reality. But they couldn't remove it, because consciousness isn't incidental to reality, it's fundamental. What this means for your daily life is staggering. Every morning when you wake up in that state of anxiety and reaction we talked about earlier, you're not just feeling bad. You're actively collapsing the wave of possibilities into outcomes that match that anxious, reactive frequency. You walk into your day expecting problems, and your brain, through that reticular activating system we discussed, begins filtering reality to show you problems. You expect people to be difficult, and suddenly everyone seems unreasonable. You expect opportunities to be scarce, and you become blind to the openings that were there all along. This isn't pessimism or bad luck. This is consciousness creating reality through the quality of attention you're bringing to each moment. But here's the transformation that's available to you right now. If consciousness creates reality, then you have far more power than you've been led to believe. You're not broken, you're not damaged, you're not stuck in some permanent state of limitation. You're simply operating at a frequency that hasn't been calibrated to your actual potential. And calibration is a skill. It's something you can learn, practice, and master. The hidden truth they don't want you to understand is that the systems we've been discussing, the ones harvesting your attention, keeping you reactive, draining your energy, they only work if you remain unconscious of them. The moment you become aware, the moment you realize you have a choice about where your focus goes and what frequency you operate from, everything shifts. Think about the last time something unexpectedly good happened in your life. A chance encounter that led to an opportunity, a solution that appeared out of nowhere, a person who showed up at exactly the right moment. Most people call this luck or coincidence. But if you examine those moments closely, you'll often find that they occurred during periods when you were feeling more open, more positive, more aligned. That wasn't random. That was your consciousness operating at a higher frequency, which allowed your filter to recognize possibilities that were invisible to you when you were operating from stress, fear, or scarcity. Now, I want to take you even deeper into the practical mechanics of how to recalibrate your frequency, because understanding is only the first step. The real transformation happens when you have specific techniques that allow you to consciously shift your state in real time, regardless of what's happening around you. Write, "I'm ready to shift" in the comments if you're seeing how much control you actually have over your experience. Because what comes next is the bridge between theory and tangible change. The bridge between understanding and application starts with something so fundamental, so available to you right now, that most people completely overlook it. Your breath. Right now, as you're reading this, notice what's happening with your breathing. The moment I drew your attention to it, something changed, didn't it? You became aware of something that was happening automatically just seconds ago. You went from unconscious to conscious in an instant. And here's what most people miss. This same switch exists for everything in your life. Your emotional reactions, your habitual thought patterns, your automatic behaviors, all of it runs on autopilot until you bring conscious awareness to it. Your breath is the gateway between your voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. It's the one autonomic function that you can consciously control, which makes it the perfect tool for taking your power back from those reactive states we've been discussing. When something triggers you, a critical email, a stressful conversation, an unexpected problem, your body immediately responds with a chemical cascade. Cortisol floods your system, adrenaline spikes, your heart rate accelerates, your muscles tense. This is your ancient survival mechanism activating, preparing you to fight or flee from danger. But here's the revelation that changes everything. If you don't feed that chemical response with your thoughts, if you don't create stories and narratives around what's happening, the entire cascade completes itself and dissipates in exactly 90 seconds. 90 seconds. That's all it takes for an emotion to move through your body naturally and release. But we never let it complete, do we? The moment we feel that surge of anxiety or anger or fear, we immediately start thinking about it. We replay what just happened. We imagine what might happen next. We create elaborate stories about what it means, what they meant, what we should have said, what we should do. And suddenly those 90 seconds become 90 minutes, 90 hours, 90 days of carrying the same emotional charge, the same stress response, the same pattern of reactivity. We're not experiencing new emotions anymore. We're just recycling old ones through our mental loops, keeping them alive through the stories we tell ourselves. This is where the practical transformation begins. The next time you feel that surge, that spike of stress or anxiety or frustration, try something radically different. Don't resist it. Don't try to think your way through it. Don't analyze why it's happening or what you should do about it. Instead, bring your full attention to your breath. Inhale slowly for a count of 4. Hold for 4. Then exhale for a count of 6. That slightly longer exhale is crucial. It activates your vagus nerve, which is like the main highway of your parasympathetic nervous system. It's the biological mechanism that pulls you out of fight or flight and into what's called rest and digest. That state of calm clarity where you can actually think straight and make decisions aligned with your true intentions rather than your survival programming. This isn't meditation for the sake of relaxation. This isn't a nice-to-have wellness practice. This is you consciously taking control over your energetic state in real time. This is you refusing to let external circumstances dictate your internal frequency, and the impact compounds. Every time you interrupt that automatic reactive cycle, you're weakening the neural pathway that keeps you stuck in old patterns. You're literally rewiring your brain to respond differently. The neuroscience behind this is clear. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you repeatedly practice conscious breathing in moments of stress, you're creating new neural pathways that make that response more automatic over time. Eventually, you don't have to work as hard to access that state of centered presence. It becomes your new baseline. Now I want to reveal something about how this connects to everything we've discussed about frequency and reality creation, because this is where the pieces start coming together in a way that makes the entire journey make sense. Leave "This is powerful" in the comments if the practical application is clicking for you, because what I'm about to show you next is how this simple breathing technique becomes the foundation for rewiring which version of reality your brain shows you throughout your entire day. The breathing technique we just covered isn't just a stress management tool. It's the entry point to understanding something far more profound about how you interact with reality. Because while you're consciously regulating your nervous system through breath, something else is happening behind the scenes that most people never become aware of. Your brain is making split-second decisions about what information gets through to your conscious awareness and what gets filtered out. And those decisions are being shaped by the state you're in. Here's what's actually happening every single second of your existence. Your brain is being flooded with roughly 11 million bits of information. Visual data from everything in your field of vision, auditory signals from every sound within range, tactile sensations from every point of contact on your skin, electromagnetic frequencies from devices around you, chemical signals from your internal organs, temperature changes, air pressure, the list goes on. 11 million bits of data competing for your attention every single second. But your conscious mind, that part of you that's reading these words right now, can only process about 40 to 50 bits per second. Think about that ratio for a moment. You're experiencing less than 1% of what's actually happening around you. Actually, Far less. You're experiencing about 0.0001% of reality. So what happens to the other 99.9999%? It gets deleted, filtered out, never reaches your conscious awareness. And here's where the hidden truth reveals itself. Something has to decide what makes it through that filter and what doesn't. That's where your reticular activating system comes in, that programmable filter we mentioned earlier. It's constantly scanning that flood of information and making instant decisions about what matters and what doesn't, based on your beliefs, your past experiences, your current emotional state, and most importantly, your focus. This is why two people can walk down the same street and have completely different experiences. One person operating from anxiety and stress will notice every potential threat, every obstacle, every reason to worry. Their filter is calibrated to scan for danger. The other person, operating from curiosity and openness, will notice opportunities, beauty, interesting possibilities. Same street, same 11 million bits of information, completely different. Realities being constructed by two different filters. The information was always there. The difference is what each person's brain decided to show them. Now here's where your breathing practice connects to this process in a way that creates immediate, tangible transformation in your daily life. When you use that technique, inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 6, you're not just calming your nervous system, you're actively reprogramming your filter, because when you shift from a stress state to a calm state, your reticular activating system shifts what it's scanning for. In stress, it looks for problems. In calm, it looks for solutions. In fear, it highlights threats. In openness, it highlights possibilities. The reality around you hasn't changed, but the reality you experience has completely transformed. This explains something that's probably happened to you before. You've been stressed about money, feeling like there are no options, and then the moment you finally relax about it, maybe you go for a walk, maybe you sleep on it, maybe you just let it go for an afternoon, suddenly an idea appears. A solution you couldn't see before becomes obvious. Did the solution just materialize? No. It was there the entire time, hidden in that 99.9999% of reality your stressed brain was filtering out. Your shift in state changed what your filter allowed through. The impact of understanding this cannot be overstated. You're not powerless to your circumstances. You're not at the mercy of external events. You're an active participant in the construction of your perceived reality through the conscious management of your internal state. Every time you regulate your breath, you're not escaping reality. You're gaining access to more of it. You're expanding the bandwidth of what you can perceive, which directly expands the range of possibilities available to you. Comment, "My reality is expanding," if this connection is landing for you, because what I'm about to reveal next takes this understanding even deeper into how you can actively program your filter to show you the specific opportunities and solutions you're looking for. Programming your filter is something you're already doing, whether you realize it or not. The question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Let me give you an example that will make this instantly clear. Think about the last time you bought a car, or even just seriously considered buying a specific model. Maybe you were looking at a particular brand, a certain color, a specific year, and then something strange happened. Suddenly, you started seeing that exact car everywhere. On your morning commute, in parking lots, driving past you on the highway. It felt like the entire world had simultaneously decided to buy the same vehicle you were interested in. But here's the reality. Those cars were always there. Every single one of them was on the road before you ever thought about buying that model. Because density of that particular car in your city didn't change overnight. What changed was your reticular activating system. The moment you decided that car mattered to you, your brain reprogrammed its filter to scan for it. And once programmed, your filter started highlighting that specific vehicle every time it appeared in your environment. This isn't magic. This isn't coincidence. This is your brain proving to you in real time that consciousness shapes perceived reality. Now, most people experience this phenomenon and think it's just a curious quirk of psychology. But what they're missing is the profound implication. If your brain can be programmed to see cars, it can be programmed to see anything. Opportunities, solutions, connections, resources, possibilities that are invisible to you right now because your filter isn't calibrated to notice them. The information is there, the options exist, but your reticular activating system is scanning for different things that match your current beliefs, your habitual focus, your emotional state. This is where the transformation moves from theory to practical application. Your filter is being programmed constantly, every single day, through what you focus on, what you think about, what you expose yourself to. When you spend your mornings scrolling through anxiety-inducing news and social media, you're programming your filter to scan for problems, threats, and reasons to be concerned. When you spend your evening replaying stressful conversations and worrying about tomorrow, you're reinforcing that program. And then you wonder why your days feel like an endless series of obstacles and challenges. Your brain is doing exactly what you trained it to do, showing you a reality that matches your programming. But the moment you understand this mechanism, you gain access to incredible power. Because if you can unconsciously program your filter through habitual worry and distraction, you can consciously program it through intentional focus and deliberate practice. This is where everything we've discussed starts coming together into a practical method you can use immediately. The breathing technique regulates your state. That regulated state changes what your filter scans for. And now you can add specific programming that directs your filter toward exactly what you want to see more of in your life. The technique is straightforward, but requires consistency. Before you go to sleep at night, when your conscious mind starts to soften and your unconscious becomes more accessible, you ask yourself a very specific, solution-focused question. Not a vague wish like, I want to be successful or I want to be happy. Those are too abstract for your reticular activating system to work with. Instead, you ask concrete questions like, what's one way I could generate an extra $1,000 this month that I haven't considered yet? Or, who in my existing network could help me with this specific challenge I'm facing? You're not trying to answer the question consciously. You're planting it as a seed in your unconscious mind, programming your filter to scan for relevant information while you sleep and throughout the following day. Then, the moment you wake up, before you reach for your phone, before you expose yourself to anyone else's agenda, you prime your filter with another question. What opportunity could show up today? This simple question activates your reticular activating system to start scanning for openings, possibilities, and connections throughout your entire day. Write, I'm programming my filter, in the comments if you're starting to see how much control you actually have over what shows up in your reality. Because what I'm about to share next is the crucial piece that most people miss when they try to apply this technique. The crucial piece that ties everything together is understanding that what we're discussing isn't new. This isn't some trendy, personal development concept invented last decade. Ancient mystics, spiritual teachers, and philosophers have been pointing to this same truth for thousands of years. They called it mentalism, the principle that all is mind, that the universe itself is mental in nature, that reality bends and shapes itself according to consciousness. They understood that what you perceive as solid, fixed, unchangeable reality is actually far more fluid and responsive than it appears. They just didn't have the language of neuroscience to explain the mechanism. Now we do. Modern science has caught up to ancient wisdom and given us the biological explanation for what mystics have been teaching all along. The reticular activating system is how thoughts literally program what becomes real for you. It's the bridge between consciousness and experience, between intention and manifestation, between what you focus on and what you encounter in your daily life. The mystics were right. Your mind does shape reality, not through some supernatural force, but through the very tangible, very measurable process of selective attention and filtered perception. This convergence of ancient wisdom and modern science reveals something profound about the journey you're on right now. You're not learning something completely foreign to human understanding. You're remembering something that's been known and practiced for millennia, but got buried under layers of materialist thinking that tried to convince you that you're nothing more than a biological machine responding mechanically to external stimuli. That paradigm served certain purposes. It made people easier to control, easier to predict, easier to manipulate. But it was never the complete truth. The complete truth is that energy mastery isn't just about managing your stress levels or improving your focus, though those are beneficial side effects. What we're really talking about is fundamentally rewiring which version of reality your brain shows you on a moment-to-moment basis. We're talking about determining what opportunities become visible to you, what possibilities enter your awareness, what connections you notice, what solutions appear. This is the practical application of consciousness shaping reality, not in some abstract philosophical sense, but in the very concrete sense of what shows up in your day, what options you see, what paths become available. Think about two people working in the same company, sitting in adjacent cubicles, exposed to the same information, the same opportunities, the same resources. One person sees dead ends everywhere. They focus on office politics, on limitations, on why things won't work. Their filter is programmed to highlight obstacles. The other person, in the exact same environment, sees possibilities. They notice the gaps that need filling. They recognize the connections between different projects. They spot the opportunities for contribution that others miss. Same company, same information, completely different realities being experienced purely based on how their filters are programmed. This isn't about positive thinking or forced optimism. This is about the quality of consciousness you bring to your experience. When you master your energy, when you learn to regulate your state and consciously program your filter, you're not changing what's out there. You're changing what you're capable of perceiving, and since you can only act on what you perceive, changing your perception changes everything. The opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. The solutions that existed all along finally register in your awareness. The right people show up at the right time because you're finally calibrated to notice them. Now, I want to take you into the next layer of this understanding, because there's something happening at an even deeper level that determines not just what you see, but how you energetically interact with everything and everyone around. You leave "I'm rewiring my reality" in the comments if this is resonating with your own experience, because what comes next reveals how your personal frequency affects not just your own perception, but the actual behavior and responses of other people in your presence. Your frequency doesn't just affect what you perceive, it affects what actually manifests in your experience. And I know that sounds like a bold claim, maybe even too bold, but there's a discovery from quantum physics that fundamentally changed how scientists understand the nature of reality itself, and it has direct implications for your daily life that most people never connect. In 1927, physicists conducting experiments at the subatomic level stumbled upon something that shattered their understanding of how the universe works. They discovered that particles, the fundamental building blocks of everything you see and touch, don't exist in a definite state until they're observed. Before observation, These particles exist as waves of probability, not as actual concrete things with fixed properties, but as multiple potential outcomes existing simultaneously in a state of superposition. The particle is here and there and everywhere all at once until the moment consciousness enters the equation. Then suddenly the wave collapses. All those probabilities condense into one single definite reality. The observer doesn't just witness what's there. The observer participates in determining what becomes there. Think of a coin spinning through the air. While it's spinning, it's neither heads nor tails. It's both at once, pure potential. Your observation is what forces it to land, to choose, to become one definite outcome instead of remaining in that state of possibility. This isn't just a quirk of tiny particles in laboratories. This principle operates at every level of reality, in every decision you make, every interaction you have, every opportunity that crosses your path. Reality exists in multiple potential states until your consciousness, through your focus, your beliefs, your energetic frequency, collapses those possibilities into one concrete experience. Now, you might be thinking this only matters at the quantum level, that it doesn't affect your job interview, your relationships, your financial situation. But that's exactly the hidden truth that changes everything. When you walk into that job interview, convinced you're not qualified enough, something invisible but measurable happens. Your body language shifts, your shoulders round forward slightly, your voice loses its natural resonance, your eye contact becomes less steady, your energy broadcasts uncertainty, hesitation, self-doubt. The interviewer across from you has their own unconscious detection systems running, reading all these subtle signals. And in that moment, the probability field of potential outcomes, the wave of possibilities for how this interview could go, begins collapsing toward rejection. Not because you lack skills, not because you're unqualified, but because your consciousness, operating through your energetic state, actively participated in creating that outcome. The same mechanism works in reverse. When you walk into a situation from a state of centered presence, when you've regulated your nervous system through that breathing technique we discussed, when you've programmed your filter to scan for possibilities rather than threats, your entire energetic signature changes. Your body naturally expands. Your voice carries more authority. Your eye contact is steady and authentic. You radiate a frequency of confidence and capability. The other person's unconscious systems pick up on this too, and the probability field collapses differently, toward connection, toward opportunity, toward the outcomes you actually want. This is synchronicity in action, not luck, not random chance, but the natural result of your consciousness interacting with the field of potential that surrounds every situation. You're not manifesting through wishful thinking or visualization alone. You're participating in the construction of outcomes through the quality of presence you bring to each moment. Your internal state, your frequency, literally influences which version of reality crystallizes out of the infinite possibilities available. Now, I want to reveal how this operates not just at the level of opportunities and outcomes, but at the fundamental level of how you interact energetically with other people, because there's a biological mechanism in your brain that makes you either a transmitter or a receiver of other people's frequencies, and most people have no idea they're being influenced. Comment frequency matters if you're seeing how deep this actually goes, because understanding what happens when two nervous systems meet will completely change how you navigate every relationship and interaction in your life. When two people interact, something happens beneath the surface of conversation that determines the entire trajectory of that exchange. You've experienced this, even if you've never put words to it. You meet someone, and within seconds, without them saying anything offensive or inappropriate, you feel drained, Or the opposite, you encounter someone whose presence makes you feel more energized, more alive, more capable. This isn't mystical intuition, this is biology. Your nervous system is constantly reading and responding to the nervous systems of everyone around you, creating either coherence or chaos, depending on who's leading the energetic exchange. The job interview example we touched on earlier is just one instance of a pattern that plays out in every meaningful interaction you have. When you show up in a state of regulated presence, when you've done the work to center yourself and calibrate your frequency, you're not just managing your own experience, you're creating an energetic field that influences everyone you encounter. The person across from you, whether it's an interviewer, a potential client, a first date, a difficult family member, begins unconsciously synchronizing with your state. This isn't manipulation. This is the natural consequence of how human nervous systems function when they come into proximity with each other. But here's where most people misunderstand what's actually happening. They think synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences where the right person appears at the right time, where the solution shows up exactly when you need it, where opportunities align in ways that feel too perfect to be random, is something that happens to lucky people. They treat it like a lottery. You either win or you don't. But synchronicity isn't luck. It's coherence. It's what naturally occurs when your internal psychic state aligns with the external circumstances you're navigating, when there's harmony between what you're broadcasting energetically and what you're encountering in your environment. Reality doesn't just feel smooth. It actively reorganizes itself to support your path forward. Think about the last time something unexpectedly worked out for you. Maybe you were struggling with a problem and ran into someone at a coffee shop who happened to have the exact expertise you needed. Maybe you were thinking about making a career change and received an unexpected job offer that aligned perfectly with your vision. Maybe you needed specific information and it appeared through a random conversation or an article that somehow found its way to you. Most people call this coincidence and move on. But if you examine those moments closely, you'll often find they occurred during periods when you were operating from a different frequency than usual. You were more open, more present, less attached to specific outcomes, and in that state, your filter was calibrated to recognize possibilities that would have been invisible to you when you were stressed, anxious, or forcing things to happen. This is manifestation stripped of all the mystical baggage that makes it seem inaccessible or unrealistic. You're not trying to bend the universe to your will through positive affirmations and vision boards alone. You're participating in the creation of outcomes through the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment. Your thoughts matter because they shape your focus. Your focus matters because it programs your filter. Your filter matters because it determines what you perceive. Your perception matters because it influences your actions. And your actions, combined with your energetic state, directly impact which probabilities in the field around you collapse into concrete reality. The transformation happens when you stop seeing yourself as separate from the flow of circumstances in your life and start recognizing that you're an active participant in that flow. Every decision you make, every conversation you have, every moment of presence or distraction is sending signals into the field of possibilities and receiving signals back. You're in constant dialogue with reality. The question is whether you're having that dialogue consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or randomly, from a state of centered power or scattered reactivity. Now, I want to show you how this understanding translates into something even more practical and immediate. How your frequency literally changes the behavior of other people in real time through a biological mechanism you can learn to use deliberately. Drop "I'm in dialogue with reality" in the comments if you're starting to see how much agency you actually have in co-creating your experience, because what I'm about to share next gives you the practical tools to lead every interaction from a place of conscious presence rather than unconscious reaction. Leading interactions from conscious presence starts with understanding something fundamental about the nature of reality itself. Everything vibrates, and I mean everything, not metaphorically, literally. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're reading this on, the air molecules surrounding you, all of it is vibrating at specific frequencies. Sound waves, light waves, electromagnetic fields, even your thoughts and emotions are measurable frequencies that can be detected and recorded. This isn't spiritual philosophy, this is physics. Everything in existence is energy in motion, and that motion creates vibration, and that vibration creates frequency. Your emotional state isn't just something you feel internally, it's a frequency you're broadcasting outward, constantly, whether you're aware of it or not. Fear vibrates at a low, dense frequency. It creates contraction in your body, tunnel vision in your perception, and a filter that scans exclusively for threats and problems. When you're operating from fear, your entire energetic signature announces to everyone around you and to your own reticular activating system that the world is dangerous, resources are scarce, and survival is uncertain. Love, gratitude, joy, these vibrate at much higher frequencies. They create expansion, openness, and a filter that naturally seeks connection, possibility, and abundance. Ancient civilizations understood this relationship between frequency and consciousness in ways that modern society has largely forgotten. They didn't have oscilloscopes and spectrometers, but they understood through direct experience that certain sounds, certain rhythms, certain musical tunings had profound effects on human consciousness and well-being. One of the most fascinating examples is how they tuned their instruments and composed their music. They used 432 Hz as their reference frequency, and modern research is now revealing why this specific tuning was so universally adopted across different cultures that had no contact with each other. 432 Hz resonates with Earth's own electromagnetic heartbeat, which pulses at 7.83 Hz. When you listen to music tuned to this natural frequency, something remarkable happens in your nervous system. You begin synchronizing with the planet itself. Studies show that this tuning reduces cortisol levels, lowers heart rate variability in healthy ranges, and creates what scientists call coherence, a state where your heart rhythm, your breath, your brain waves, and your entire system align in harmonic resonance. You're not just listening to music, you're entraining your frequency to match the fundamental vibration of the earth you're living on. Compare that to the standard tuning used in most modern music, which is 440 Hz. This slightly higher frequency creates a subtle but measurable tension in the nervous system. It's not catastrophic, it's not going to harm you. But over time, constant exposure to frequencies that don't resonate with your natural rhythms contributes to that baseline sense of being slightly out of sync, slightly off-center, slightly more stressed than necessary. This is one more example of how the environments we've created in modern life, from the electromagnetic fields of our devices to the tuning of our music to the pace of information flow, are all pulling us away from our natural frequencies and into states of chronic dysregulation. But understanding this gives you power. Because if you know that different frequencies create different states, you can deliberately expose yourself to frequencies that support the state you want to cultivate. You can use sound, music, even the rhythm of your own voice and breath to shift your frequency in real time. You can become conscious of how certain environments, certain people, certain media consumption patterns affect your vibrational state. And once you're conscious of it, you can make different choices. Now, I want to take this understanding of frequency and show you exactly how it manifests in your Emotional landscape, because emotions aren't random feelings that happen to you. They're specific frequencies that you can learn to navigate and even generate on command. Right. Frequency is everything. In the comments, if this connection between vibration and consciousness is clicking for you. Because what comes next reveals how to use your emotional frequency as the most powerful tool for reshaping your entire experience of reality. Your emotional frequency operates like a radio dial, constantly tuning you into different stations of reality. And just like you wouldn't expect to hear classical music when you're tuned to a rock station, you can't expect to perceive abundance, connection, and opportunity when you're vibrating at the frequency of fear, scarcity, or resentment. Fear is a low, dense frequency. It creates contraction throughout your entire system. Your muscles tighten, your breathing becomes shallow, your field of vision literally narrows, a phenomenon called tunnel vision that's been documented extensively in neuroscience. And remember that reticular activating system we've been discussing? When you're in fear, it immediately shifts into threat detection mode. It starts filtering reality to show you everything that confirms your fear, everything that validates your sense of danger, everything that proves the world is unsafe. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle that's incredibly difficult to break out of once you're caught in it. Fear makes you see threats. Seeing threats generates more fear. More fear narrows your perception even further, and before you know it, you're living in a reality where obstacles appear at every turn, where people seem hostile or unreliable, where opportunities feel non-existent. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The reality itself hasn't become more dangerous. Your frequency has simply tuned you into the channel that broadcasts danger, limitation, and scarcity. Now flip the dial. Gratitude, joy, love. These emotions vibrate at completely different frequencies. They create expansion rather than contraction. Your body relaxes, your breathing deepens, your peripheral vision opens up, and your reticular activating system, it recalibrates instantly. When you're genuinely grateful, your brain starts filtering for more things to appreciate. This isn't positive thinking platitudes. This is your filter doing exactly what it's designed to do, show you more of whatever you're focused on. When you focus on what's working, what you have, what you appreciate, your brain highlights more of that. Opportunities you would have walked right past suddenly become visible. Connections you would have missed suddenly seem obvious. Resources that were always available suddenly materialize in your awareness. I've seen this play out countless times, both in my own life and in the lives of people who've applied these principles consistently. Someone will be struggling financially, feeling like there's no way forward, completely stuck in scarcity consciousness. Then they start a simple practice. Every morning, before anything else, they write down 3 things they're genuinely grateful for. Not generic things, specific things. The warm water in their shower, the fact that their car started, the coffee that tastes exactly right, small, tangible things that are actually true for them in that moment. And within days, sometimes within hours, things start shifting. Not because the universe magically responded to their gratitude, but because their filter reprogrammed. They started noticing opportunities that were invisible to them before. A conversation at the grocery store leads to a freelance gig. An email they would have deleted catches their attention and opens a door. A friend mentions something that sparks an idea they can actually implement. This is the hidden truth about manifestation that nobody wants to hear because it requires actual, consistent practice rather than just wishful thinking. You don't get what you want. You get what you're vibrating at. You don't attract what you wish for. You attract what you are. When you operate from gratitude, you become someone who sees abundance. When you operate from fear, you become someone who sees scarcity. Same world, same circumstances, completely different experiences based entirely on the frequency you're broadcasting and the filter that frequency creates. The transformation becomes permanent when you understand that you're not trying to force yourself to feel grateful when you don't. That's just another form of resistance and self-judgment. Instead, you're training your attention to notice what's actually already there, that you've been filtering out. The warmth of the sun, the reliability of your breath, the fact that you have access to information and resources that kings and emperors from previous centuries would have killed for. These aren't trivial things you're forcing yourself to appreciate. These are real, tangible aspects of your current reality that your fear-based filter was simply trained to ignore. Now, I want to reveal how this emotional frequency doesn't just affect your individual perception, but actually connects you to something much larger, a field of shared consciousness where your vibrational state determines which patterns and possibilities you have access to. Comment, "I choose gratitude," if you're recognizing how much power your emotional state actually holds, because what I'm about to share next takes this understanding beyond your personal experience and into the realm of collective transformation. Your frequency doesn't operate in isolation. This is one of the most profound realizations you can have about how consciousness works. You're not a closed system broadcasting into empty space. You exist within a vast, interconnected field of consciousness that connects every human being through shared patterns, shared experiences, shared archetypal energies. Ancient traditions understood this intuitively. They talked about the unity of all things, the web of life, the invisible threads connecting every soul. Modern psychology gave us language for it through concepts like the collective unconscious, this deeper realm beneath individual awareness, where all human consciousness meets and mingles through patterns that transcend culture, time, and individual experience. When you shift your frequency, you're not just changing what you personally perceive, you're literally altering which archetypal energies in this collective field you resonate with and have access to. Think of it like this. The collective consciousness contains every possible pattern of human experience. The hero's journey, the wise mentor, the unexpected ally, the hidden opportunity, the devastating setback that becomes the catalyst for transformation. All of these patterns exist as potentials in the field, waiting to be activated through resonance. When you operate from fear and scarcity, you resonate with and activate the patterns of victimhood, of struggle, of isolation. When you operate from gratitude and openness, you resonate with patterns of support, of synchronicity, of resources appearing exactly when needed. This explains something that's probably mystified you before. How is it that when you make a genuine shift in your internal state, suddenly the right people start appearing in your life? How do opportunities that seemed impossible last month suddenly become available this month? Even though nothing obvious changed in your external circumstances, you changed your vibrational signature, and that new signature began attracting circumstances, people, and revelations that match it, not through magic, not through the universe conspiring in your favor, through the natural law of resonance. Like frequencies attract, similar vibrations synchronize. You become a magnet for whatever you're consistently broadcasting. This is the hidden truth behind every major breakthrough, every unexpected success, every moment when someone's life suddenly clicks into alignment after years of struggle. They shifted frequency. Maybe they hit rock bottom and finally surrendered their resistance. Maybe they had a moment of clarity that dissolved years of limiting beliefs. Maybe they simply committed to a consistent practice that gradually elevated their baseline vibration. However it happened, once their frequency changed, reality responded. The people they needed to meet found their way into their orbit. The information they needed to know showed up through unexpected channels. The opportunities that aligned with their new state became visible and accessible. But here's what most people miss when they hear about this concept. They think it means you just need to be positive and good things will happen. That's not how it works. This isn't about denying reality or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding that your vibrational state determines which layer of reality you have access to. Every situation contains multiple potential outcomes. Every moment holds multiple possible paths forward. Your frequency determines which possibilities you can perceive, and therefore which ones you can act on. When you're vibrating at fear and limitation, you literally cannot see the solutions and opportunities that are visible to someone vibrating at trust and possibility. They're looking at the same situation from a different frequency, and that different frequency reveals different options. The transformation compounds when you realize this applies to every area of your life simultaneously. Your relationships improve not because people change, but because you're now resonating with the version of them that was always there, but invisible to your previous frequency. Your financial situation shifts not because money magically appears, but because you start noticing and acting on opportunities your scarcity-based filter was blocking. Your health improves not just because you take better care of yourself, but because you're no longer operating from the chronic stress state that was suppressing your immune system and disrupting your body's natural healing capacity. Now, I want to show you the specific biological mechanism that makes this resonance effect measurable and undeniable in your daily interactions with others. Because there's something happening in your brain right now that's constantly syncing you with everyone around you. Leave "I'm shifting my frequency" in the comments if you're recognizing your own patterns in this explanation. Because what comes next gives you the practical understanding of how to consciously lead rather than unconsciously follow in every energetic exchange you have. The biological mechanism that makes energetic influence measurable is something most people have never heard of. Yet it's operating in your brain every single second you're around another human being. You have specialized neurons called mirror neurons, and their job is to constantly scan and read the nervous systems of everyone in your environment. This isn't some mystical sixth sense. This is documented neuroscience. When you're talking to someone who's stressed, your mirror neurons fire in patterns that match theirs. Within seconds, literally seconds, your breathing rate increases to match theirs. Your shoulders tense to match theirs. Your voice pitch rises to match theirs. You've just synchronized with their chaos without making any conscious decision to do so. This is why certain people leave you feeling completely drained after just a few minutes of interaction. It's not that they're intentionally stealing your energy through some supernatural process. It's that their nervous system is dysregulated, and your mirror neurons are working overtime trying to match that dysregulation, which exhausts your own system in the process. You walk away from those conversations feeling like you've run a marathon, not because anything dramatic happened, but because your biology was forced into a state of stress resonance that your body had to work hard to maintain. But here's where this understanding becomes incredibly powerful. The same mechanism that allows you to unconsciously sync with someone else's stress also allows you to consciously lead them into calm. Most people go through life as energetic followers. They walk into a room and immediately absorb whatever emotional frequency is dominant. Someone's angry, they become defensive. Someone's anxious, they become worried. Someone's scattered, they lose focus. They're constantly being pulled into other people's states because they're not consciously managing their own. But once you understand how mirror neurons work, you can flip the entire dynamic. You can become the one who sets the energetic tone rather than the one who absorbs it. The technique is surprisingly simple, but requires practice to execute when You're actually in a tense situation. Next time you're in a conversation that's escalating, maybe it's an argument with a partner, a confrontation with a colleague, a difficult phone call with a customer service representative. Try something radical. Instead of matching their intensity, do the opposite. Deliberately lower your volume. Not to a whisper, but just noticeably softer than they're speaking. Slow your speaking pace. Give space between your words. Relax your jaw, your shoulders, your hands, and take deeper, smoother breaths. And here's what's fascinating. Within 30 to 60 seconds, you'll watch their nervous system start mirroring yours instead of you mirroring theirs. Their voice will soften. Their breathing will steady. The tension in their body will begin to release. The entire energy of the conversation shifts, not because you convince them of anything through logic or argument, but because you changed the field they're operating in. You became the anchor point. You held a frequency of calm presence that their mirror neurons couldn't help but start matching. This is true power. Not the power to dominate or control, but the power to hold space for transformation through the quality of your own regulated state. This works in every context: business negotiations, family conflicts, first dates, job interviews. Any situation where two nervous systems meet and begin the automatic process of synchronization. When you become conscious of this process and learn to lead rather than follow, you stop being a victim of other people's emotional weather. You become the person who can walk into chaos and create coherence simply through your presence. You become someone people want to be around, not because you're entertaining or impressive, but because being near you feels good. Your regulated nervous system offers their dysregulated one a pattern to match, and the relief of that matching is something they feel even if they can't articulate why. Now, I want to take this practical understanding and show you how it connects to the larger framework we've been building throughout this entire journey. Because there's one critical piece that determines whether these techniques create temporary shifts or permanent transformation in your life. Write "I lead with presence" in the comments if you're recognizing how much influence you actually have in every interaction, because what comes next reveals the difference between understanding these principles intellectually and integrating them so deeply that they become your natural way of being. Becoming the anchor point in your own life isn't a one-time achievement. It's a moment-by-moment choice that requires you to develop a level of self-awareness most people never cultivate. The difference between someone who occasionally feels centered and someone who lives from that centered state is simple: consistency. When you become truly conscious of your own internal state, not just when things are going well, but especially when circumstances challenge you, you stop being a puppet to other people's emotional weather. You stop letting external chaos dictate your internal frequency. You become the stable presence that others unconsciously lean on, the person who holds space for possibility when everyone else is drowning in reactivity. But here's where most people stumble. They learn these principles, they understand the science, they even practice the techniques for a few days or weeks, and then they wonder why their life hasn't dramatically transformed. They tried the breathing, they attempted gratitude, they visualized their goals, and yet nothing fundamental seems to have changed. This is where we need to talk about why manifestation fails for the vast majority of people who attempt it, because the failure isn't in the principles themselves. The failure is in how they're being applied. Most people approach their goals and desires completely backwards. They close their eyes and visualize what they want. They create vision boards filled with images of dream homes, perfect relationships, abundant bank accounts. They spend 5 or 10 minutes feeling good about these possibilities, generating temporary positive emotions around their desired outcomes. And then they open their eyes, return to their normal state, and wait for the universe to deliver. Days pass, weeks pass, nothing changes. and they conclude that manifestation is nonsense, that consciousness doesn't shape reality, that they're powerless after all. But manifestation isn't magic. It's not about sending wishes into the cosmos and hoping they bounce back as reality. It's applied neuroscience. It's working with that programmable filter we've spent so much time discussing, your reticular activating system. And here's the critical insight. Your filter doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't respond to what you want or what you visualize for 10 minutes before bed. It responds to what you consistently focus on, what you repeatedly think about, what your emotional state broadcasts hour after hour, day after day. If you spend 10 minutes visualizing abundance and then spend the next 23 hours and 50 minutes worrying about bills, stressing about money, and feeling the contraction of scarcity, guess which frequency your filter is actually programmed to? Guess which version of reality your brain is going to show you? This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work. This is why affirmations feel hollow if you don't believe them. This is why visualization without genuine state change creates nothing but disappointment. You can't trick your filter with temporary good feelings. Your nervous system knows the difference between a 5-minute exercise and your actual baseline state. Your reticular activating system responds to your dominant frequency, not your aspirational one. If you're vibrating at fear and lack for 23 hours a day, no amount of visualization during the remaining hour is going to override that programming. The transformation happens when you stop trying to manifest outcomes and start managing your state. When you recognize that the goal isn't to get what you want, the goal is to become someone who operates at the frequency where what you want becomes visible and accessible. This is a complete paradigm shift in how you approach change. Instead of asking, "How do I get that thing I desire?" you start asking, "Who do I need to become energetically, to perceive and act on the opportunities that lead to what I desire?" Instead of trying to force reality to bend to your will, you calibrate your frequency so that you naturally resonate with the version of reality where your goals already exist as accessible possibilities. Now, I want to reveal the practical structure that makes this shift from temporary practice to permanent transformation, because knowledge without consistent application remains nothing more than interesting information. Drop "I'm becoming," not just wanting in the comments if this distinction is landing for you, because what I'm about to share is the daily framework that turns these insights into tangible, lasting change in your actual lived experience. The daily framework that creates lasting change starts with understanding one crucial distinction that most people completely miss. Your reticular activating system doesn't respond to your intentions. It doesn't care what you say you want or what you claim to be working toward. It responds exclusively to your consistent focus, what you actually think about hour after hour, what you mentally rehearse when you're not paying attention, what emotional frequencies you default to when you're on autopilot. If your intention is abundance, but your focus is constantly on debt, checking your bank account with anxiety, worrying about bills, calculating what you can't afford, your filter will show you more bills, more evidence of lack, more reasons to feel financially stressed. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because that's what you're programming your brain to highlight. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They set an intention for something better, but their actual moment-to-moment focus remains locked on what they're trying to move away from. They want health, but think constantly about their symptoms. They want success, but replay their past failures. They want connection, but focus on loneliness. And then they're confused when nothing shifts, but your filter doesn't know the difference between what you want and what you don't want. It only knows what you're giving attention to. Whatever receives your focus gets amplified in your perceived reality. This is why trying harder at the wrong thing creates more of the problem, not less. The transformation begins when you redirect your focus with precision and consistency, not through force or willpower, but through strategic timing. There's a specific window every single day when your conscious mind naturally softens and your unconscious becomes more receptive to programming. That window is the transition into sleep. As you move from waking consciousness into that hypnagogic state between awake and asleep, your critical thinking relaxes, your defenses lower, and direct access to your unconscious mind opens up. This is when you can plant seeds that your deeper intelligence will work on throughout the night, without your conscious mind interfering. The technique requires specificity. Vague questions like, "How can I be successful?" or "What should I do with my life?" are too broad for your unconscious to work with effectively. Instead, you ask targeted, solution-focused questions that have concrete answers. Something like, "What's one way I could generate an extra $500 this week that I haven't considered yet?" Or, "Who in my existing network could help me solve this specific problem I'm facing?" Or, "What's the next immediate step I could take toward this goal that would create momentum?" You're not trying to solve the question consciously. You're planting it as an assignment for your unconscious mind to process while you sleep. Your unconscious has access to information your conscious mind has filtered out. It can connect dots you've missed. It can see patterns you've overlooked. It has processing power that operates outside the limitations of your waking awareness. When you give it a specific question to work on, it goes to work making connections, surfacing memories, highlighting relevant information from that vast database of experience and observation you've accumulated but can't consciously access. And often, the answer doesn't come as a dramatic revelation. It comes as a quiet knowing when you wake up, a subtle impulse to call someone, an idea that feels obvious in retrospect. A connection you suddenly see between two things that seemed unrelated before. But here's the crucial part that determines whether this technique creates results or just becomes another thing you tried once. When your unconscious shows you something, when that answer surfaces, when that impulse arises, when that connection becomes clear, you must act on it immediately, not later, not when it's more convenient. Not after you've analyzed it to death and talked yourself out of it. Immediately. Because every time you honor the intelligence that emerges from this process, you strengthen the feedback loop. Your unconscious learns that when it provides solutions, you actually implement them. So it starts working harder, showing you more, giving you better quality information. But if you ignore what surfaces, if you doubt it or dismiss it or procrastinate on it, the loop weakens. Your unconscious stops offering because you've demonstrated you're not ready to receive. Now I want to show you how to complete this daily framework by addressing the moment you wake up, because that first conscious moment of your day is just as critical as the last. Comment, "I'm activating my unconscious," if you're ready to implement this technique tonight, because what comes next ensures that the programming you plant before sleep actually translates into tangible opportunities and actions throughout your waking hours. The moment you open your eyes in the morning, you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads to unconscious reactivity, grabbing your phone, flooding your consciousness with everyone else's agenda, setting your filter to scan for problems and obligations. The other path leads to conscious creation, taking control of your first waking moments to program your filter before the world gets its hooks into you. Most people choose the first path by default, not even realizing they're making a choice. But now that you understand how your reticular activating system works, that choice becomes visible. And visible choices can be changed. Before you reach for your phone, before you check messages or scroll through news or expose yourself to any external input, you prime your filter with one simple question. What opportunity could show up today? That's it. You're not trying to predict the future. You're not trying to force specific outcomes. You're simply activating your reticular activating system to start scanning for openings, possibilities, connections, and resources throughout your entire day. This takes maybe 15 seconds. But those 15 seconds fundamentally alter what your brain will highlight for the next 16 waking hours. Your filter is now calibrated to notice opportunities that would have remained invisible if you'd started your day in reactive mode. And here's where everything we've discussed throughout this entire journey comes together into practical, measurable results. Because once you've programmed your filter through your bedtime question and your morning prime, opportunities will start appearing, not because the universe magically responded to your request, but because your brain is now showing you what was always there. A colleague mentions something in passing that sparks an idea. You receive an email you would have normally deleted, but something makes you actually read it. You overhear a conversation at the coffee shop that contains exactly the information you needed. A friend texts you about something that seems random but connects perfectly to the question you planted last night. These moments are your filter working. These are the openings your reticular activating system is highlighting because you programmed it to scan for them. And this is the make or break moment where most people lose all the progress they've made. They see the opportunity, they recognize it, they think, that's interesting, I should probably follow up on that. And then they don't. They get busy, they get distracted, they talk themselves into waiting. They analyze it too much and convince themselves it's not the right move. And the opportunity passes, the moment closes, the connection fades. When this happens repeatedly, something insidious occurs. Your unconscious mind learns that even when it does the work of highlighting opportunities for you, you don't actually want them. You're not ready, you're not serious, so it stops working as hard, it stops showing you as much. The feedback loop breaks down, your filter slowly recalibrates back to its default setting of showing you problems and obligations. Because that's what you actually respond to. This is why so many people try these techniques for a week or two and then quit, claiming they don't work. The techniques worked perfectly. Their filter started showing them opportunities, but they failed to complete the loop by taking immediate action. Immediate action doesn't mean you have to do something dramatic or life-changing in that moment. It means you honor the signal. If your filter highlights a person you should talk to, you send that message right then. If it surfaces an idea worth exploring, you write it down and schedule time to develop it. If it shows you a connection between two things, you act on that connection before your rational mind talks you out of it. Each time you do this, you strengthen the loop. Your brain learns. When I show opportunities, they get acted upon. So it shows you more, better quality, more relevant, more aligned with what you actually need. This feedback loop is the difference between intellectual understanding and embodied transformation. You can know everything we've covered in this video and still live the exact same life if you don't train yourself to act when your filter shows you openings. But when you consistently act, even on small things, even when it feels uncertain, you build momentum. One action leads to another opportunity. That opportunity leads to a connection. That connection leads to a resource. And suddenly, within weeks or months, your entire reality has reorganized itself around your new frequency because you've been actively participating in the reconstruction rather than passively hoping for change. Now, I want to address the final piece that determines whether this transformation becomes sustainable or whether you drift back into old patterns within days. Write, "I act immediately" in the comments if you're committing to honoring what your filter shows you, because what I'm about to reveal is the uncomfortable truth about why most people fail to maintain these practices even when they know they work. The uncomfortable truth about why transformation feels so difficult is that you're not just changing habits or thoughts. You're challenging decades of systematic programming designed specifically to keep you compliant, predictable, and controllable. This programming started the moment you entered the education system. Sit still, raise your hand before speaking, memorize these facts. Don't question the curriculum, follow the rules, accept what authority figures tell you. Get good grades so you can get into a good college, so you can get a good job, so you can buy things you don't really need, so you can work harder to afford more things. The entire system is built on one fundamental principle. External validation matters more than internal knowing. You learn to seek permission before taking action. You learn to wait for experts to tell you what's true. You learn that your own intuition, your own insights, your own direct experience of reality should be questioned and doubted unless someone with credentials validates it first. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't just the natural evolution of education. This was, and is, systematic conditioning designed to produce compliant workers and consumers who don't question the structures they operate within. People who defer their power to institutions. People who trade their sovereignty for the illusion of security. And the most insidious part of this programming is that it feels normal. After years of conditioning, you don't even notice you're doing it. You instinctively look outside yourself for answers instead of trusting what you already know. You hesitate to act on opportunities because you're waiting for someone to give you permission. You suppress your authentic responses and reactions because you learned that fitting in matters more than being real. This is what keeps people stuck far more than lack of knowledge or understanding. They know what they should do. They can feel what's true for them. But the programming whispers, who are you to trust yourself? What if you're wrong? What will people think? Stay safe. Stay small. Stay in line. The social mask you wear, that carefully constructed version of yourself designed to be acceptable, likable, non-threatening, becomes so familiar that you forget it's a mask at all. You start believing that's who you actually are. Every time you bite your tongue in a meeting because speaking up might create waves. Every time you laugh at jokes that aren't funny because everyone else is laughing. Every time you post the version of your life that makes you look successful rather than the reality you're actually living. Every time you do this, you move a little further from your authentic self. You trade a piece of your truth for a moment of belonging. You sacrifice your frequency for acceptance. And after years, decades of these micro-trades, you wake up one day feeling exhausted, disconnected, and powerless, because you are disconnected from yourself. The version of you that's been showing up in the world isn't the real you. It's a carefully edited performance designed to avoid rejection, criticism, judgment. The real you, the one with desires and dreams and intuitions and a unique frequency that wants to express itself, has been buried so deep under layers of conditioning and social performance that you've forgotten it even exists. This is why the practices we've discussed, the breathing, the filter programming, the conscious state management, feel so difficult at first. You're not just learning new techniques. You're dismantling years of programming that taught you to ignore your internal state, to dismiss your intuition, to seek external validation instead of trusting your own knowing. You're reclaiming territory that was colonized before you were old enough to recognize what was happening. And that process requires more than understanding. It requires courage. The courage to stop performing. The courage to trust yourself even when no one is validating your choices. The courage to act on what you know is true for you, even when it makes others uncomfortable. The awakening happens when you start asking questions that the system never wanted you to ask. Not, how do I succeed within these structures? But, why do I believe these are the only structures available? Not, what do they want from me? But, what do I actually want for myself? Not, how do I get there? Approval. But when did I decide their approval mattered more than my own integrity? These questions are dangerous to the systems that rely on your compliance, which is exactly why you need to ask them. Now, I want to reveal what becomes possible when you stop living according to someone else's script and start operating from your actual frequency. Because the transformation isn't just personal, it's transpersonal. Leave "I'm removing the mask" in the comments if you're ready to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been hiding, because what comes next shows you how authenticity becomes the most powerful tool for creating the reality you actually want to live in. Reclaiming your authenticity requires recognizing something that might make you uncomfortable at first. The systems you live within aren't neutral. They never were. The educational structures that taught you how to think, the economic frameworks that define success, the media ecosystems that shape your perception of reality, the social platforms that algorithmically determine what you see and who you connect with. None of these are passive environments you simply navigate. They're active forces that shape behavior, filter perception, and manufacture consent so effectively that most people never question them. In fact, most people actively defend the very structures that limit them because they've internalized the programming so deeply they believe it's their own thinking. This isn't conspiracy thinking. This is pattern recognition. When you start paying attention, you see how the game is designed, how attention is harvested and monetized, how insecurity is created and then sold back to you as products that promise to fix it, how complexity is manufactured to keep you feeling inadequate and dependent on experts, how fear is amplified to keep you compliant. These aren't shadowy figures plotting in dark rooms. These are systemic incentives playing out exactly as they're designed to. The people participating in these systems aren't necessarily evil or malicious. They're just operating within structures that reward certain behaviors and punish others. And those structures have one primary function: extraction of your time, of your money, of your attention, of your energy, of your consciousness itself. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that's when real choice becomes possible. You start noticing where you've been giving your sovereignty away, to a career that demands everything and gives back scraps of validation, to relationships where you diminish yourself to avoid conflict, to beliefs you inherited without ever examining whether they're actually true for you, to habits that serve systems rather than serving your actual well-being. Every area where you feel powerless, stuck, or frustrated is an area where you've traded authenticity for something that felt safer in the moment. Security, approval, belonging. These aren't bad things to want, but when you sacrifice your truth to get them, you pay with your frequency. And paying with your frequency means living in a reality that reflects that compromised state back to you. The transformation out of this pattern doesn't happen through a single dramatic breakthrough. It happens through consistent daily practice that reinforces new neural pathways, new energetic patterns, new ways of being. This is the part most people don't want to hear because it requires structure and discipline. But there's no way around it. You need morning rituals that set your energetic baseline before the world bombards you with its agenda. That breathing practice we discussed, that filter programming question, that conscious choice to not reach for your phone first thing. These aren't optional nice-to-haves. They're the foundation of everything else. You need midday resets for when the chaos of life tries to pull you back into reactivity. Brief moments throughout your day where you check in with your state, regulate your nervous system, and consciously choose your frequency rather than unconsciously absorbing whatever's around you. And you need evening practices that clear the accumulated energetic residue from your day and program your unconscious mind while you sleep. Without this consistent structure, you'll drift back to default settings, not in weeks, in days, sometimes in hours, because your old patterns have decades of momentum behind them. They're deeply grooved neural pathways that your brain returns to automatically when you're not consciously directing it elsewhere. This is why knowledge alone changes nothing. Understanding these principles intellectually is useful, but it's just the beginning. The real transformation happens in the daily repetition, in showing up for yourself even when you don't feel like it, in maintaining your practices even when results aren't immediately visible, in trusting the process when your old programming is screaming that this is pointless, that nothing's changing, that you should just give up and go back to what's familiar. That resistance is actually proof you're doing something that matters. If it was meaningless, your system wouldn't fight it so hard. Now, I want to bring everything full circle and show you what your life actually looks like when these practices become your new baseline, rather than something you're trying to force yourself to do. Comment, "I'm building new patterns," if you're committed to the daily work, rather than just the temporary inspiration. Because what I'm about to share reveals the profound shift that happens when frequency mastery stops being a practice you do and starts being who you are. When frequency mastery becomes who you are, rather than something you're attempting to achieve, everything shifts. You stop forcing yourself to breathe consciously because regulated breathing becomes your natural state. You stop trying to program your filter because scanning for opportunities becomes automatic. You stop working to maintain presence because presence becomes your baseline. This isn't about becoming perfect or transcending your humanity. It's about returning to a more authentic, more coherent version of yourself that was always there beneath the layers of conditioning and reactive patterns. The person you become through this process doesn't look dramatically different from the outside. You're not suddenly levitating or radiating visible light, but internally, everything has reorganized. You move through the same world with a completely different frequency, which means you're experiencing a fundamentally different reality. The circumstances that used to derail you for days now pass through you in 90 seconds. The people who used to drain you either shift their behavior around you or naturally exit your orbit. The opportunities you couldn't see before become so obvious you wonder how you ever missed them. And most importantly, you stop feeling like life is happening to you and start experiencing it as something you're actively co-creating through the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment. This is the journey, not a destination you arrive at, but a continuous process of becoming more conscious, more intentional, more aligned with your actual frequency rather than the one you were taught to broadcast. And if you've made it this far in this video, that tells me you're not just casually interested in these ideas. You're genuinely ready for this level of work. You're recognizing patterns in your own life. You're seeing where you've been giving your power away. You're understanding that transformation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you practice into existence. If this conversation resonated with you, if something shifted while you were here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This channel exists to bring you frameworks that actually create change, not just temporary inspiration. Every video is designed to give you tools you can implement immediately, principles that work in real life, not just in theory. And if you found value in what we covered today, tap that like button. It helps this message reach others who are searching for the same understanding you were looking for when you clicked on this video. Leave a comment saying, "I mastered my frequency," if you made it all the way through. It lets me know this work is landing with the right people, and honestly, it helps the algorithm understand that this content deserves to reach more people who need it. There's a video right here that takes what we just covered even deeper, showing you exactly how to handle the specific challenges that arise when you start operating at a different frequency than the people around you. Click on it and continue this journey with me over there. I'll see you in the next one.